The latest on Tyrese Maxey and what it will mean for the Philadelphia 76ers. More trouble and drama in Philadelphia. We've got it all coming up.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, you're Locked On Philadelphia 76ers. I'm Kayla Santiago alongside Keith Pompey, and you can start the season with a big return to FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. If you win your first $5 bet, make sure you visit FanDuel.com. So the news nobody wanted to hear comes out today, the latest on Tyrese Maxey. The 76ers last night falling to the Clippers in a very rough second half, and they're tied for the worst in the NBA. We cannot have anything nice here in Philadelphia. That is what it is coming out to be. So Tyrese Maxey, last night, he goes out early in the game, does not come back to return due to the hamstring. Keith, we just got updates on what this means for him and for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things they're going to do further evaluation. But typically when you do further evaluation, that typically confirms what you already have, right? So you're getting a second opinion. But the expectation is that he's going to miss a couple weeks. And the thing is, you know, they're saying he has hamstring tightness, but typically that's a hamstring strain. The thing is, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, Maxey played the entire third quarter. He shot the ball 0 for 3, 0 for 2 on 3-pointers. But it's one of those things where, you know, you look at it and, you know, you feel the tightness, you feel the soreness, whatever it is, and then you just shut them down. But in regards, what does it mean for the 76ers? You know, it's a tough spot. I mean, we're looking at it, a guy who, you know, has been providing much of the offense. You're looking at it where now you're saying you have Paul George, who probably going to be he is going to be the only all-star, so to speak, playing for the Sixers tomorrow against the Lakers. And then you don't have Joel Embiid coming back until when Tuesday. So you're going to have Maxey out. So they never had a full team. They just never had a full team. And it just, when we thought they were getting ready to, they're not. And these are one of those injuries that you can't rush a player back. You have to basically take your time, go through things, make sure he's 100%. Because as we found out last year with Nico Batum, you come back too early, the next thing you know, you're going to be on the shelf a couple more weeks.
My takeaway right now is that the Philadelphia 76ers are in trouble, and I know that people might say that's an overreaction, but the injury bug is clearly hitting this locker room in Philadelphia, and as you alluded to, just as you thought this team was going to get back fully healthy with everybody, now Tyrese Maxey is out for some time. And this was my biggest worry with him coming in and not having Paul George and Joel Embiid, the amount of minutes, the pressure on him, what he's going to have to play. If he gets injured, it's going to be a real problem, and now you're looking at that real problem. So now you're saying, okay, well, Paul George just came back from injury. You know, he's trying to get better and better with the chemistry of the team. That chemistry now completely is going to be different in this next game without Tyrese Maxey. Not only that, you're asking Paul George to now be that guy to play a ton of minutes and being able to develop that offensive game plan because you don't have Tyrese Maxey now and you still don't have Joel Embiid for at least 2 more games. So this is trouble to me right now, and you don't want to rush Tyrese Maxey back, and I hope that he is okay. But you look at the Philadelphia 76ers and you say, what else could go wrong? And we always have said Tyrese Maxey cannot go down. It's happening now. It's still early in the season, and I understand that. There's time to develop from this and be able to get a better record. But it just has been such a rough start for this team, and this on top of it, oh boy, this is just not a fun time right now for anybody watching this team. It's going to be tough. And I think Paul George having that much pressure on him and having to play that many minutes, that's going to be tough on a guy that's a veteran coming into this league, not necessarily in his prime of prime anymore. You don't want PG to get more injured too.
Yeah, I mean, I think PG will be fine. You know, well, no, it is what it is. Like, the 76ers have to realize that it's a lot of expectations, and this might not be it. Like, this might not be the year, at least for the early goings, right? So, because the thing about PG, he's a type of guy, he's a veteran dude, and he realized, like, hey, I'm not coming back until I'm ready, until
Right.
I'm 100% ready. And then he came back. But yeah, he's going to have to carry the load. Paul George came here thinking he was going to be a third option or whatever, but right now, he's going about to be the point forward. He's going to be the face of the team tomorrow, and then also on Sunday. So it's one of those things where it's just a doom and gloom right now for the Sixers.
It's a really tough situation. That's the best way to put it. And yesterday I was all positive saying, oh, the Sixers are going to beat the Clippers. That clearly did not happen. We'll break that down in a little bit. But now this comes out and it's like, oh boy, here we go again. Consistently, the injuries happening in Philadelphia. So Nick Nurse is clearly going to have to continue to go after these rotations, figure out what works. And I'm going to see who is going to step up in terms of what we want to look at. So right now, do you start Kyle Lowry? Do you start a guy that's also a veteran that's not in his prime? Is that who you're looking at to start? Does Jared McCain get more minutes off the bench, but then there's more pressure coming towards him and he might get exposed defensively? You're looking at a really interesting turn of events. And then we've also touched on the Sixers do have a back-to-back coming up when Joel Embiid does come back. If Paul George and Joel don't play, this team has no chance of winning at all without Tyrese Maxey being on the court. So there's a lot of things.
This team has no chance of winning a lot of games right about now. I mean,
It's
I'm just going
bad.
to be
It's
real
bad.
with you. Even if Paul George and Tyrese Maxey played, it would be a major upset for them to beat the Knicks and Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
So, like, the thing is, when you talk about other guys that they could possibly use, I think, you have to go with Kyle Lowry. You just have to. You don't have anyone else. Now, the one thing is, more so than Jared McCain, I think that, you're going to have to dust off the dust that Reggie Jackson has. And I'm not calling him dusty. I'm saying he's just not playing a lot. So,
Right.
when we look at Reggie Jackson, what's his NBA skill? What's his best NBA skill set? That's getting buckets, right? So I feel like what's going to happen is, the three ball handlers that they're going to have are going to have to be Kyle Lowry, Paul George, and Reggie Jackson. But when Reggie comes in, he's trying to get buckets. That's what it's going to be,
It's doom and gloom. We could say the least for the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, looking at the games that they've played so far, a lot of people always say that Joel Embiid is not the MVP because he doesn't play enough games. And he's not going to be, because now the NBA put those restrictions on getting those awards. But you look at this team right now, and Joel is the most valuable player to this team. With that being said, do you think they can win some games with Joel and Paul George and no Tyrese? Because the issue becomes here, when Joel comes back, their schedule doesn't get any easier. It gets tougher. You have the Knicks, you have the Cavs, you have the Magic, that are teams that are really going to give you a run for your money. Do you think there's any truth to them being able to pull out some wins without Tyrese Maxey if Joel Embiid is in the lineup?
Yeah, I do. I love Tyrese Maxey, but the thing is, like, if we're going right now, think about it. The 76ers, Tyrese Maxey played in all the games so far. And again, this isn't a knock against him, but the team is 1-6.
Yeah.
Joel Embiid is the guy, right? He's the guy. So if you have Joel Embiid and you have Paul George, if they're together, then all of a sudden it doesn't go to become a 3-man game. It turns into a 2-man game. And then that's where you have a guy like, a Kyle Lowry or something like that out there. Now, the problem is, how many minutes do you want to give a Kyle Lowry? And
Right.
then what are you going to do with Kyle Lowry on the defensive end? I know Maxey scores a lot of points, but what we're talking about, two guys who are borderline. Well, I ain't going to say Joel's a borderline, and I'm not going to say Paul's a borderline, but they're like Hall of Fame caliber players. Maxey is good. He's an all-star player. He's not quite accomplished the things that they have accomplished yet. And the best thing that he has going for him right now is that he's way younger than them. But, in regards to, we looked and saw what he did when he was by himself. We looked and saw what they did when PG and him did it. Are together. Embiid is the best player on the team. He's the most important piece on the team. So I feel like if you take Maxey out of the equation and you have PG and Embiid, they're going to win. If you take Paul George out of the equation and you have Embiid and Maxey, they're still going to be extremely competitive.
Now, the three of them clearly all playing together elevates them to be those high caliber teams, possibly the Knicks. You look at the Cavs right now, too. They have a better chance beating those teams with all three, of course. We're not saying that they don't, but Joel Embiid is the MVP of the 76ers. Not only that, they have more depth in that guard position than they do in the center position. And as much as Andre Drummond says he's the best rebounder ever, and he has played some good minutes, there's a big drop-off between Joel Embiid and Andre Drummond. There's a big drop-off in the NBA between centers like Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic, and then the rest of the centers in the league, too. He's just one of the best players, skilled players in the league right now, and the 76ers need him, especially with Tyrese Maxey being out. So it's unfortunate. We don't like to see it.
If Tyrese Maxey was playing, they wouldn't need him.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
and it's no disrespect to Tyrese, but Joel Embiid is the most dominant in his position, especially in the Eastern Conference. You can argue that with him and Nikola Jokic, but at the same time, he is the MVP of this team regardless. But with that being said, we do host Tyrese Maxey. He comes back sooner than later and is able to get healthy quickly, and we'll see kind of what this means for the Philadelphia 76ers. Right now, it's just doom and gloom, though. And our hopes probably not going to go up until Joel Embiid is on the court with Paul George. With that being said, we're going to talk about even more dark times of the Philadelphia 76ers of last night's game, how it went down on the West Coast, and kind of where we expect them to go from there in just a moment. But first, we have to tell you about Skims. So if you like to work out, I'm sure you've seen it a ton of times. Skims is the perfect wear for you. Not only that, you can wear it dressing up or dressing down, put it on with a pair of jeans, have a nice top, or wear it as a workout set. Whatever you need, Skims is able to provide. So make sure you go check it out today. Let them know we sent you as well. If you want to get all of your pieces are very high quality, they're able to work in so many different ways. If you want to go out on a date night or a day out in the town, you can dress it up. Or if you just want to work out, lounge around the house, it is also there for you too. So let them know we sent you once again. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show, Locked On Sports Network, in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gifts for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever, also available at skims.com. I know somebody that loves to get ahead. I celebrate Christmas. I like to get ahead on getting that shopping done because once December comes, it's just crazy and chaotic. And he likes to get ahead on being able to get those gifts for someone special. You can do that today at skims.com. Make sure you take advantage of a holiday special at skims.com. Let them know that we have sent you. Once again, make sure you select podcast to be able to check it out. And we will send you as well the Locked On Sports Network. All right, so 76ers fall to the Clippers. I was excited about this game. I said that they would win it. Clearly, they proved me wrong. That's what happens when I get my hopes up with this team. But let's analyze this a little bit. So Paul George makes his return. He gets booed a lot, and he comes out and says, today, I was a free agent. I don't really understand it. It's not like I got traded or demanded a trade and sat out. Still, he takes the better deal with the more money and comes to Philadelphia. So when you look at it right now, that game really just got out of hand in the second half. We saw in the beginning that Caleb Martin was defending James Harden, but there was just so many other pieces for the Clippers that were able to get them over the edge. Keith, let's go to the second half. Just what went wrong for Philadelphia?
I just feel like that they went up against, the Sixers have a lot of deficiencies. I think the way that we're seeing them play right now, they're going to have a hard time beating a lot of teams. They just don't have the horses. And, you look at Norman Powell, who's not exactly, like you say, an all-star type player. You look at several of the other players that they had out there, they were just younger, more athletic, and they got to the ball better than the 76ers. The problem with the Sixers at this particular time also is that their defense always goes into lapses. And here's something else too. Now Maxey did play the entire third quarter, right? He
Mhm.
shot the ball 0 for 3. But when they took Paul George out the game, the other team ended up ending the quarter on a 16-2 run, right? The game was over at that point. So to me, it's just that what happened is one of those things that happens all the time in the second half. It happened against Memphis, it happened against other teams, is where the opposing squad just comes out and goes on this run and says good night.
It's so interesting because basketball is the game of runs, and we all know that. But for whatever reason, right now with this Philadelphia 76ers team, whenever they get down, they cannot come back from that deficit. It has been so tough to see all season long. They score and then they can't get back on the defensive end to stop the other team from scoring when they're in rhythm. And then that just continues to grow and grow apart. And then they end up falling in these games. It doesn't look good. Now, I think Paul George looked better in this game, especially to start things out, than he did in game one against the Suns. But it's got to be more than just Paul George. Caleb Martin is somebody offensively that hasn't been doing it for me, especially with now PG in the lineup. And I get it. He's probably trying to figure out his identity as this team is trying to figure out their identity too. But there's just a lot of different things that is going wrong with this team right now. How do you look at and analyze it? We can say from a coaching standpoint of how are you going to win these games? Because it has been consistently, they've been down, they've gotten behind on runs, and they have not been able to close the margin a little bit. Is it switching more on defense? Are your rotations on defense need to be different? Maybe mixing guys on the bench and from the starting lineup? What is the answer here? And it's tough to explain what that can be, but with Tyrese Maxey being out now for a few weeks, Joel Embiid not coming back to the Knicks game, I don't think they're going to win against the Lakers. But you can't go against the Charlotte Hornets either and say, oh, it's just the Hornets. The 76ers are one of the worst teams in the NBA right now. So you need to go in each and every game and reevaluate the situation. How do you think Nick Nurse reevaluates this team right now without Tyrese Maxey going into their next matchup, seeing what happened last night against the Clippers?
I mean, I think Nick Nurse to me is an easy person to rip, right? But it's kind of like he wasn't the guy at the grocery store buying the groceries. He's trying to figure stuff out. Now, as far as he reevaluates it, like the thing is, when we look at Caleb Martin, he showed times that he can score, but he's really a quintessential role player. But you're
Yeah.
asking him to be the guy, right? I mean, I guess the best bet for them to do is Kelly Oubre has to slide into that third role, and or second role right now, and he's going to have to get buckets, right? The other guys, when we look at them, unfortunately, when you look at this roster, you say to yourself, Aaron Gordon can do this, but Kyle Lowry can do this, but he
Mhm.
has a lot of guys that are that way. He doesn't have a lot of, quintessential two-way players. You know what I mean? Andre Drummond can do this, but so I think like what's going to have to happen is, I mean, they may have to change the way they play. I think, but I do think the easiest thing is getting Kelly Oubre more involved. I mean, when you look at let's be honest, like, let's look at this roster right now. So you have the three max players, right?
Yep. Mhm.
Outside of that, the next three players in order of money, like as far as ranking by money, is Kelly Oubre, who had a minimum contract last year, Caleb Martin, who is an undrafted guy who was waived by the Charlotte Hornets and made a niche for himself in Miami because he hustled, and KJ Martin, a guy who the only reason why he got burned last year is because they traded everyone. So now they bring him back, but everyone's saying they're bringing him back because they gave him that money so they can trade him, right? So right now, outside of the big three, these are three key pieces for the 76ers. So when we look at them, we're all saying, well, they can't do this, they can't do that. Well, they weren't supposed to be able to do this and do that. Like, you understand what I'm saying? So that's where the problem arises. But I feel like he has to get Kelly Oubre going. He has to get him more involved to do stuff. And what that does is Caleb Martin's best position to me is doing the stuff that we don't see in the stat sheet. Like, you know what I mean? Like setting
Hmm.
picks, playing D,
Right.
stuff like that. Because he did a phenomenal job on Devin Booker guarding him 2 nights ago. So
Yeah.
to me, that's what has to happen.
At the end of the day, this team is constructed for the three stars to play in almost every game and in the playoffs. That's how this team is constructed. So you're asking a lot of people to step up. Now, I want to ask you this, Keith. I have a dark cloud hovering over my head right now, giving me flashbacks to the Brooklyn Nets when it was Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. Who plays more games together as a trio? KD, Kyrie, James Harden, or Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George?
I mean, the Sixers, I mean, they'll play more. I mean, we're talking about Joel's about to come back. Whatchamacallit's back. Maxie's only like, this injury is for a couple weeks, or maybe longer than that. But I think they'll play a whole lot more. I do. I do. Because, Harden has some serious injuries. Kyrie was tripping, right? For the most part, right? He didn't want to be there. So I think, yeah, I think it's going to be this group. It's going to be this group.
They
I'm
have
confident
to.
it's going to be this group.
They have to. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the difference is there's less personalities on this team. You don't have a Kyrie and James Harden kind of going at it with KD. You have Joel Embiid, who they kind of know is the centerpiece. But Tyrese Maxey, I'd be shocked. That would not be on my bingo card. That seems like the exact opposite of how he would react in a situation like this. And then Paul George just try to come in and win a ring at the end of the day. So I agree with you. I just had to throw that out there though, because it's doom and gloom right now. So I'm just escalating how I feel in terms of looking at this trio, because this team is constructed for all three of those guys to be playing. And now other guys are having to step up. So we're going to touch more on that. This team is tied for the worst in the league, the worst in the league. How do we analyze that? Are we truly worried at this point of the season, or will it not matter once the end of the regular season comes and it comes playoff time? So don't go anywhere. We're going to touch on that in just a moment. But of course, we have to tell you about FanDuel, and there is a huge game tonight for Thursday night football. You've got the Ravens and the Bengals coming to you. Now, these lines will probably change throughout the day, so make sure you head over to FanDuel.com right now. But at this moment, the Ravens are -6.5 favored over Cincinnati. So if you believe that, if you think Lamar Jackson will go out there and ball out, make sure that you place your bets today at FanDuel.com. You can also place on the spread, player bets, and everything in between. It's going to be a fun one. Two fun offenses to watch with Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. You can go check it out at FanDuel.com right now. Make sure you place your bets. That's America's #1 sports book. You will not want to miss out on placing your bets. There's no better place than FanDuel to do so. The bottom, the worst, the absolute worst right now in the NBA, tied for it. I think that's the only saving grace right now for the Philadelphia 76ers. So, Keith, we've been touching on how bad this team is. It's still early on in the season. Are you worried at all? Do you feel like this is going to carry over to once these guys come back? Now, we expect them to win a lot more games once Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George all play together. When is that going to be? Now we have to wait even longer with the injury to Maxey. Are you worried at this point of the season? Because the 76ers have not only not found their identity, but they haven't had a chance to, because this lineup keeps changing.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be worried about this because, first of all, they're talking about Joel Embiid is going to continue to miss games. He said he's not playing on back-to-backs, right? So that's concerning, right? Secondly, when they played teams early on, I mean, they played the worst teams like the Detroit Pistons,
Yeah.
the who else did they lose to?
The
Detroit.
Raptors.
The Raptors. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So they played a lot of what we used to call bum squads. And guess what? They lost.
Hmm.
So when you look at that, yeah, of course, it's concerning because the schedule is only going to get tougher. And yes, you do have Joel Embiid coming back, but the fact that Joel Embiid um, is not is not going to play in all the games is concerning because when you think about it, let's go immediately. So Joel Embiid is saying he's not going to play on back to backs. So what happens? So all of a sudden, it's like he plays the first game against the Knicks, but he
Right.
doesn't play against Cleveland.
Yep.
So to me, that's a problem because next thing you know, you're going to go up against the best team in the league right now because Cleveland has the best record, and you're only going to have Paul George. You know what I mean? So that's a problem.
I'm going to turn it to a positive note a little bit here. I think the one thing you can look at is when Joel Embiid does come back. Now, PG also said he probably will not play in back-to-back, so that's what the reports have been saying too. So with Nick Nurse managing that and the team managing that without Tyrese Maxey is going to be crazy probably to figure out because you're either going to have to rotate them and then you have Joel Embiid playing with nobody else and then you have Paul George playing with nobody else, or you have a team that has none of them trying to win some games. But when you look at the back-to-backs right now, you're right. They face the Knicks, which is what is expected to be Joel Embiid's first game back. That's November 12th. Then you face the Cavs the day after, another really tough team that's red hot to start out the season. That's November 13th. But when you look at their schedule right now, the next back-to-back isn't until the beginning of December 3rd against the Hornets. That's on the road. And then they face the Magic back at home December 4th. So that can be the only saving grace is you do have a good chunk of games there that aren't back-to-backs that maybe you can see both Paul George and Joel Embiid playing. But once again, the schedule does not get any easier from after these games. You look at the Knicks, you look at the Cavs, the Magic, for whatever reason, I've said this before, they always give the Sixers a problem, and they're a young team that can go out there and be scrappy. Then you go play the Heat, then you play the Grizzlies. We saw how that ended up, but that was without Joel Embiid. Then the Nets, the Clippers, the Rockets, the Pistons again, and then you come up on that back-to-back. So to me, that's the only saving grace right now, that there is a good chunk of games that are in back-to-backs, and hopefully we see Joel Embiid and Paul George. But the biggest thing is not playing in these back-to-backs is for these two guys to be ready for the playoffs. If they go into the playoffs with a bad seeding and they face Boston at any other point besides the Eastern Conference Final, say goodbye to your hopes of making it to ECF because it's just not going to happen. If you get into the postseason with a bad seed, it is going to be tougher than ever to get to the conference finals. So that is my worry right now. The trend of this team, I don't love. And what I also don't love is how bad they are without Joel Embiid and knowing that we're not going to have Joel Embiid in almost half of those games this season because of those back-to-backs. So that's where my worry comes in. We're not going to talk trades and everything like that going forward. That's down the line. But the 76ers are going to need to look to make some movement if this is what we're going to be looking at throughout the rest of the year. So I don't want to worry people and be a Debbie Downer here, but it's definitely concerning right now because this is one of the roughest starts we've seen in a pretty long time.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, we're talking about playoff seed and this and that. I mean, right now this team is in last place of 15 teams in the East. So I mean, I'm pretty sure they're going to go there, but I mean, I'm not pretty sure. I mean, like you would think that they would make the playoffs, but the way it looks, it's going to be rough. Like it's just going to be rough. It's going to be rough for them. I mean, like it's just a bad start. And, we're talking now like, hey, are y'all a play-in team? I mean, again, they don't have Joel. They haven't had a full roster, but, they built the big hole. They built the huge hole. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think not having Joel is understandable, and clearly he's the MVP of this team, and they're going to be better with him. But I also think people hope that the group around them would be better if Joel Embiid couldn't play. And you already know it's already predetermined that Joel Embiid is not playing back-to-back. So you look at that and you say, all right, well, already this team has showed what they can't do without Joel. there's still time in the season, but at the end of the day, they just don't look good without him. And if they don't have him on back-to-backs or Paul George, seeding is going to be interesting. So yes, I'm worried, but maybe when Joel comes back against the Knicks, all those worries will be okay. But until that game, Keith, I'm worried. I'm worried about the Lakers. I'm worried about the Hornets, which is crazy to say without Tyrese Maxey. So my hopes will go up again when Joel Embiid decides to return to the court after the suspension. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
It's a wait and see game here. We hope Tyrese Maxey is okay. But right now, there's definitely worry in the air with Paul George having to take the load, Tyrese being out for a few weeks, and Joel not coming back until the next game. So we wish we had better news for you all and could be all positive and happy and go lucky. The good thing is when Joel comes back, there is a chunk of games where there's not back-to-backs, and that can be something to look forward to see him on the court. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers. For Keith Pompey, I'm Kayla Santiago saying so long, and we will be breaking down the Lakers game tomorrow, have reactions after the game too, so make sure you stay tuned for all of that. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers. We'll see you next time.